George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
Okay, all right, thanks for coming into thecreditjungle.com again. This is going to be part 2 of Rent from Roommates in the Credit Jungle. This is George Anderson, and just leaving off from where I was on part 1, part 2 here. Part 1 I just added on here again. These roommates need to show a change of address, need to have something other than cash as a payment history on that. But then we kind of left off with this ADU thing here. And what is that? This is what is known as, in appraisal terms, this is known as an accessory dwelling unit. And I'll have a lot of people that are keenly interested in purchasing a home if they find out it's a single family residence, but like maybe the basement has another kitchen in it, maybe even a separate entrance. And they'll say, wow, this would be an awesome house because my wife and I, we're just, young single couple or young married couple here with no kids. We can easily live in the basement, rent out the upstairs, and probably get almost our whole mortgage payment made from the rent upstairs. Can you count that rental income from the other unit that's in the house that you're purchasing to help you qualify for the mortgage? So let's dive into what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. This is going to boil down to a couple of things. Number one, what is the zoning? Okay, does the zoning allow for this accessory dwelling unit here, and does it allow for maybe 2 units or whatever? And sometimes an accessory dwelling unit isn't part of the home that you're living in. I've seen a lot of people now that they'll almost have like a tiny house that they will build back behind their house. So in other words, here's the primary residence, but then they've got like maybe a like an apartment style something that was detached from the house. And if the zoning allows for that provision, that is what we would call a detached duplex. It's a duplex. There's 2 units on the same tax ID number, but they're separated from each other. So if the zoning allows for 2 units and it meets code, and otherwise, whatever the building codes were for having that separate building on there, then the answer to that is yes. And you can count up to, depending on what area you're in for FHA, you can count up to 80% of what the proposed rent would be on that as additional income towards qualifying and getting more of a house. Now, if it's a single family residence and the zoning doesn't have a provision for that, then this accessory dwelling unit is the proposed rent that you would be getting from this cannot help you qualify because it's not a legal rental property. And if you're doing an FHA loan, FHA is going to want to see that there's a separate electric meter, that there is separate meters for gas, and also, and this is the big one, there has to be 2 separate furnaces. Now, back in the old days when they used to say, well, what's the reason for that? Well, they would always refer to tuberculosis, or some other respiratory disease. Well, we live in the age of COVID now. So, I mean, if the people upstairs and you guys are all on the same furnace with all the same vents and the cold air returns and everything else, when the furnace kicks on, guess what? Whatever airborne whatever is in the upper unit is going to come into the lower unit and vice versa. Okay, so that 2 separate furnaces there knocks out a lot of single-family residents that have an accessory dwelling unit from being able to count additional rental income on it. However, duplexes, anything that is 2, 3, or 4 units, is still considered by all 4 of these as, all 3 of these as a residential property. That 5th unit tips it over to being commercial property, and that's a completely different type of loan program for that. But anyway, these accessory dwelling units, I have a lot of people that have purchased a home that has an accessory dwelling unit, and after they've lived in it for a year, guess when you can count that rental income? Well, it goes back up here to this thing in the Schedule E, because if you really are collecting the rent and you want to use it as qualifying income, then you should put it on your tax return. And as soon as you do that, you establish basically that, whether or not this accessory dwelling unit meets the legal duplex requirements. In other words, it's not a legal duplex, it doesn't have the separate furnace, but you have a history again of showing that income on your tax return, on your Schedule E. Now you can count that income for FHA, VA, conventional, all the way down. So again, there's some value to, even though you might be getting paid cash or whatever, and if you are being paid cash under this situation here, doesn't matter. If you put it here, then you're reporting it to the IRS and we can count it. So now when we get into the calculations for 3 and 4 unit properties, triplexes and fourplexes, there's a little bit different math on that one, and I think that there's a video that's still up on the channel that has those calculations. But these accessory dwelling units, these are great properties. In fact, I have a real estate agent that initially she got all 5 of her children. She made sure that they were purchasing a house that was like this because she knew that if they could qualify for the house and then rent out the basement, that it would be much easier for them while they were getting established and everything else. And then when they would move out, they'd keep that property as a rental property, and now they've got 2 tenants in there and they've already got their first investment property. So it can be a very smart way of doing things. So that's what an ADU is, and this is how it can help you qualify for Morehouse. Maybe not on this one, but definitely for picking up a potential investment property with very little down payment. So thanks for coming into thecreditjungle.com today. This is George Anderson. You can push button, get Mortgage Professional, and I'd love to help you with your finances to get the best terms available on a mortgage loan. Have a great day.